Sit in New York airport. Not the most pleasant way to spend an evening, Max thought-troned, watching the boarding process for what he hoped would be his flight home to Charlotte. Max, along with his two sisters, owned a small pharmaceutical company created by their father several decades earlier. His father developed a series of valuable but rarely used drugs that made the company profitable but never offered much room for growth. His parents had passed away, and Max had spent the last few days in New York negotiating the sale of the company to a major pharmaceutical concern. Max and his team of lawyers and brokers closed the deal today and left it to the lawyers to complete the paperwork. Max hoped he would make it home tonight, but it looked doubtful. The last flight of the day to Charlotte was fully booked, and he was third on the wait list. He didn't call his wife Camilla because he didn't know what to tell her. He sat at the bar where he could watch the gate and drank his second gin and tonic, thinking about the deal and the money he and his sisters would share. Something over $10 million for him, plus a well-compensated transition period with Big Pharma, meant a new lifestyle for him and Camille. Their twin girls were already out of the nest, or at least on their way. Both were in college, juniors at Duke, where tuition was eating him alive. But all this will change when the deal with the pharmaceutical company closes. Meanwhile, the boarding process was ending and the agents at the gate were ushering the last passengers onto the plane. And then a small miracle happened. The boarding sign changed, and Max saw that his name appeared on the waiting list. He threw the money on the bar, waved to the bartender who gave him a thumbs up, grabbed his briefcase and duffel bag, and ran for the exit. The agent at the gate handed him his boarding pass and quickly explained to him and two other passengers that the group of 4 who had checked in remotely had not shown up, so they were given seats. Max ran down the plane with his new buddies, and when he got to the gate, he realized he had a first-class seat. A good sign, he thought. I got on the flight, I'm sitting in first class, home a day early. This may mean that the pharmaceutical deal will indeed close. The boarding door closed as he boarded, and the flight attendant asked if he wanted something to drink as they taxied to the runway. He felt like he'd earned another drink, so he drank another GMT and then fell asleep, dreaming of a future for him and Camilla with enough money to always fly first class. The shock of landing woke him up. He eventually made it to the taxi stand to take a taxi home. He had driven his pickup truck to the airport a few days earlier, but now he was exhausted, a little drunk, and it was really late, too late to call Camille to come get him. They lived a few miles outside of Charlotte, so the cab ride was long enough for him to fall asleep again. The driver had to wake him up when they arrived. Max paid him, added a generous tip, and a little sluggishly got out of the taxi. It was a long, busy day and evening. He was already thinking about getting cozy in bed with Camilla when the taxi pulled away and he turned towards the house. What he saw stopped him in his tracks and woke him up completely. A gold Mercedes was parked in the driveway in front of his side of the garage. The car seemed like a very fashionable Mercedes, but then all Mercedes seemed fashionable to him. The house was dark. By then, it was past midnight, and Max just stood there for several minutes. He spoke to Camille from his lawyer's office around noon, and she said nothing about late-night visitors. He tried not to think about the unthinkable, tried to create a happy scenario that would allow him to snuggle up to warm, sleepy Camille in just a few minutes. However, his mind didn't work that way, so he slowly walked towards the door in the passage between the garage and the house. He unlocked it, entered the quiet house, and walked even more slowly through the kitchen and up the stairs to his and Camilla's bedroom. The bedroom door was open, apparently not expecting visitors, and Max stepped inside. And then it closed. There was no other way to express it. His brain stopped working, he stopped breathing, even his heart seemed to stop beating. He saw what he considered unthinkable. Camille slept, naked, spread out on her side of the bed, with one arm wrapped around the man, who was also sleeping, even smiling slightly in his sleep. Max stood there for what seemed like an eternity, but eventually his brain started working again. He looked again at Camilla's hand, lying across the man, and they both snored. This broke Max's heart. Until tonight, he had enjoyed listening to Camille snore. She was snoring quietly, almost purring, Max thought. He thought her snoring meant she felt absolutely safe, deep in the peaceful sleep that came from sharing a bed and life with Max. He often fell asleep with that soft purring sound in his ears. But that's all. He would never hear that snoring again, never sleep next to her again. Even with his heart broken, Max began to think again. He saw the man's clothes neatly folded, lying on the chair that Max had sat on hundreds of times. Smoldering rage began to flare up inside Max. He pulled up his pants and pulled out his wallet and car keys, then stopped to think a little more. He could get the tennis racket out of the bedroom closet and use it to beat the asshole up, he decided. He could also beat Camille. Both of these actions, while satisfying in the short term, could cause big problems for Max in the long term. Another idea began to form in his mind. He took out his cell phone to take some incriminating pictures as the idea germinated and expanded. Max finished taking pictures and then collected all of Asshole's clothes and shoes. The asshole was a big guy. Max was 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighed about 160 pounds. The asshole looked at least 4 or 5 inches taller and perhaps 50 pounds heavier. A tennis racket may not have been a good idea, even in the short term. Taking his clothes and shoes in his hands, Max took one last look at his wife, his loving, beloved wife, the mother of his precious daughters, and hardened his heart against the love that had fueled him for more than 20 years. He left the bedroom, still without tears, and headed back down the stairs to the outside. The key fob beeped, and the Mercedes doors opened. Max put his briefcase and duffel bag inside and slid into the driver's seat. He was never a fan of fancy cars, but when he got into the Benz, he realized that he liked it. He figured out the controls, put the car in gear, and drove off. After about a mile, Max pulled over and looked at Asshole's wallet. The usual things. Some money, business cards that identified Asshole as Franklin Thompson, a senior sales manager at a local Mercedes dealership, a driver's license that showed a Charlotte address. If Asshole had family there, Max figured he could cause some real trouble. For Asshole, of course, and maybe Camille too. But at the moment, Max was exhausted and headed to the nearest motel to get some sleep. Camilla Tronder was a very careful person. She knew that she was not as smart as her husband Max, but thanks to her caution, her affair with Franklin Thompson lasted almost 5 months without Max suspecting anything. Max was still in New York, she thought, as she lay in bed with Franklin the next morning. He was good in bed, maybe not as good as Max, but out of bed he could not compete with his husband. Too much like a car salesman, she thought, coming to the conclusion that it was time to end this affair. Franklin was becoming too possessive. He wanted to spend the night with her and she allowed it, but that would be the last time she did that. She planned to spend the rest of her life with Max and have a strange man in their marital bed. Even if Max will never know about it, it was still too disrespectful. She would call Franklin later today and gently but sternly tell him that their affair was over. Then she headed to the shower. Back in the bedroom, she was getting dressed when Franklin returned from the shower with a towel around his waist. He stood there for a moment and then asked, "Camilla, where did you take my clothes?" "What? I didn't move anything anywhere. Where are you all going this evening?" "I folded it right here, on this chair. But there are no clothes." "Did you take her with you to the guest room?" "She must be here somewhere." He muttered, heading back down the hallway to the guest room, and then immediately returned. "No, there's nothing there, there's nothing here." His voice trailed off as he tried to comprehend the disappearance of his clothes. "Perhaps you left everything downstairs when we came in the evening?" Camilla asked a little impatiently, thinking that they had both drunk too much the night before. "No, I'm sure I didn't, but I think I'll go take a look," Franklin answered, heading out of the bedroom. He quickly returned, running up the stairs. Camilla, my car is not there. My clothes are not downstairs. Someone was here at night, took my clothes and stole my car. Ah, damn it, what's going on? I'm sorry, what? Camilla tried to comprehend what Franklin was saying. How could his clothes and car go missing? The two of them stayed in the house all night. Could someone have gotten inside? Suddenly, Camilla collapsed on the bed. It was Franklin's turn to ask, What? What? Camilla tried to formulate a response, but she found it difficult to breathe, let alone speak. Franklin, what if it was Max? She finally said. What if he came home from New York while we were sleeping? What if he took your things and your car? Oh, shit, Franklin said, collapsing on the bed next to Camille. You need to find out where he is. It could be him, but if he's still in New York, that means some kind of burglar has broken in, which means we need to call the police. I have to get my things and my car back. Oh, damn, this car. If we call the police, they'll want to know who owns it, and it's in my wife's name. For some damn tax reason, His voice trailed off as he imagined a future that could range from just bad to completely catastrophic. I'll call his office. His secretary arrives very early, and she must know where he is. Camille took out her phone and dialed Max's office number. Even though it was not yet 8 o'clock, Max's secretary answered immediately. Max Tronder's office, may I help you? Hey, Sheila, this is Camille. I know it's very early, and, I'm not sure where Max is. He didn't call last night, so, did you hear anything from him? Camilla, it's still early, and I know that the team in New York worked late yesterday. They'll probably start late today. I talked to Max yesterday around 6, just before I went home. He said they were making good progress and might reach a deal today. That's good to hear. So he's still in New York, right? Yes, I'm sure he is. And I expect to hear from him as soon as they all get back to the lawyer's office. Do you want me to ask him to call you? Yes, please. But only if he has time. I know how important this deal is. Well done. Bye. They hung up and Camille turned to Franklin. Max is still in New York, so we should probably call 911 and report a break-in and car theft. Camilla, what do we tell them? That your lover had his clothes stolen from your bedroom and his car stolen from your driveway? I mean, what the fuck? We're really screwed here. Okay, I understand. Let's think about it. How about I take you home and leave you there? You dress up and report thefts, as if they happened there. While your wife was taking the kids to school. And, maybe you don't report stolen clothing. This may be harder to explain than a stolen car. Yes, except that yesterday I told my wife that I was going to Atlanta for a meeting about the new Mercedes S-Class, and I wouldn't be home until noon. Okay, but we can wait until maybe noon when you'll be back anyway. You drove home, left your keys in the car, because it was a short stop before going to the dealership, and your car was stolen while you were at home. You know, I think it might work, and I could say I left my wallet in the car and it got stolen too. And we can hang out here for a few hours. Maybe we'll end up needing another shower. Maybe together. Franklin, okay. Yeah, I need to call work to take a sick leave. Camille worked as a paralegal in a small law firm. The work was okay, if a bit boring. She went out into the hallway to make a call and returned to the bedroom to find Franklin back in bed. She was tempted, but after thinking about Max and her recent decision to end the affair, she decided to say no. Franklin, she said, without making the slightest move to take off her clothes, I think it's time to end this. We had a good run, but you know it could have been Max last night. We're lucky it was actually a bad guy. Let's find some clothes and maybe go to some place to eat for breakfast. Franklin looked at her, thought about trying to convince her, but in the end, he realized that she was right. They were lucky, but they shouldn't go too far. Yes. And with an inner smile, he remembered that another attractive middle-aged mother often came to the car dealership. Okay, I agree. It was a good run. So, how about some clothes? It turned out to be not so simple. Franklin was 50 pounds heavier and 4 inches taller than Max. Camille finally found a pair of tattered old sweatpants that seemed to fit Franklin after making a few V-cuts at the waist. She then tied some strings around his waist to hold up his sweatpants. She also found a sweatshirt that had turned pink when it was sloppily washed in the washing machine. She trimmed the sleeves and cut some more at the armholes, and Franklin had his outfit. She wanted to make a comment about the clown's clothes, but she just smiled slightly when she saw his face. They decided to watch TV until it was time to go to Franklin's house. Earlier that morning, around the time Franklin discovered his clothes and car were missing, Max pulled into the driveway of the address listed on Franklin's driver's license. There's a nice house, a small bicycle leaning against the wall of the garage. Max sat in the car for a while, thinking, wondering, but still without tears. His night at the motel passed quickly, and he didn't go out for a run until dawn. He was surprised that he didn't feel worse. Perhaps he was still in shock. He walked to the front door, taking out Franklin's wallet with his driver's license, rang the bell, and a young woman who looked to be in her 20s, attractive, but a little frazzled, opened the door. Max was wearing a suit that he had bought the day before in New York, a white shirt that now looked rumpled, and no tie. He didn't look his best, but he hoped he didn't look threatening. He held up Franklin's driver's license so the woman could see it, and pointed at the gold Mercedes. Before he could say anything, the woman slammed the door in his face, but then opened it again a few seconds later, holding her cell phone in her hand. "I have 911 on my phone, and I'm ready to press send if you don't tell me my husband is okay." "Ma'am, I have a photo on my phone of your husband and my wife in bed at night, naked and fast asleep. To be honest, I don't think there's anything wrong with your husband, or with my wife either. If you want to call 911, call 911, and I'll just wait in the car." They looked at each other for a moment until her face fell, and she opened the door to let him in. She started to say something when they both heard "Mommy" from the kitchen. "Wait here, I'll be right back." She turned away, heading back to what Max assumed was the kitchen. He heard voices, hers, and at least one of the children. She returned, handing him a cup of coffee. "I hope you drink black coffee. I have to get the kids ready for school and then take them. I'm afraid I trust you more than my husband now. You can stay here until I get back, and then we can talk." "Fine." "Okay," Max answered. "I'm afraid we're in the same boat." He sat down in the living room, and soon a woman appeared with 2 children. She introduced him as Dad's friend and walked out the door with them. Max just sat there, drank some not-so-good coffee, thought about calling his office, but ended up just sitting there. When the woman returned, she silently ran up the stairs to the living room. A few minutes later, she came back down, looking better with her hair combed and her lips a little tinted. She extended her hand to Max. As they shook hands, she introduced herself. "Sorry for the recent commotion. I am Molly Thompson, currently married to Franklin Thompson, who is currently involved with the woman you are currently married to." Max couldn't help but laugh at her turn of phrase, and it felt good to laugh. "You are absolutely right about all the current events at the moment. My name is Max Tronder, and my wife's current name is Camilla Tronder." He then explained what happened last night and saw Molly's tears begin to flow. "I'm divorcing Camilla, and I'm sure the photographs will help me get a decent settlement. I can send them to your phone if you think you might need them." "Yes, I think I should have them," Molly answered, looking at Max with dead eyes. He reached for his phone but stopped when she said, "Wait, don't send them to me. If I see them, I will never get those pictures out of my head. You keep them, and if I need them, I can call you. Right?" "Of course," Max said, but then added, "I probably won't be at my current job for long, and I definitely won't be in my current house anymore. I will give you the contact details of my lawyer. You can always contact him if you need photography or any help in a divorce situation." "Okay, thank you," Molly said. "But what should we do right now? Are you returning the car? Are you going to wait for Franklin and try to beat him up? You've seen him. He's a pretty big guy, even though he's put on a little weight. Yesterday, he was supposed to be in Atlanta for some car meeting and stay there overnight. He should be home this afternoon. You know, I kind of like this car, and I've never driven a Mercedes before. I think I'll keep it until someone forces me to return it. Your husband, and I must say his name to me is asshole, may have..." Molly laughed, and then Max joined in. both of them needing all the release they could find. "Actually, the car is registered in my name," Molly said. "For some tax reason, I think more depreciation, Franklin, or should I say asshole, put it in my name since I drive more than he does." And she paused thoughtfully, then continued, "You know, since I own this car, I can issue you a permit to drive, and the cops can call me to confirm if you get pulled over." Max liked the idea, but didn't respond, since Molly was obviously still working out the plan. "And one more thing," she said. "There have been a lot of break-ins in our area lately. You have Franklin's keys and clothes. If the key we're hiding in the backyard is missing when he gets here, he might try to break in. And if our security system is set to instant alert mode, he will attract interesting attention from the police." "Molly, I think I'm falling in love again." "You are wonderful." Okay, calm down. Franklin can just wait to come back until the kids and I get home from school this afternoon, but I can pick them up and go to the park for a while. Let's give him more time to get into even more trouble. Whatever happens, please let me know, especially if he does get into trouble with the police. And call me when you need your car back. I don't want you to get into any trouble. We'll be done. Now you need to get out of here, and so do I. Max drove off in a beautiful gold Mercedes, wondering how much the same one, only in a better color, would cost. Molly gave him the permission slip, and he assumed she would get the hidden key, set the alarm, and leave for the rest of the day. Camille and Franklin actually arrived at Franklin's house around noon. Camilla dropped him off and quickly rushed off as if she was trying to avoid further infection. Franklin walked to his front door, hoping that it might not be locked because Molly was home, but at the same time, afraid that she might be there. Of course it was locked, and he hurried around the house to the rock in the backyard, where they kept the spare key. But the stone disappeared. "Oh shit," he muttered, looking at the back of his house, wondering if he should break in. He tried to open the back door, but it was also locked, so he decided that he really had no choice but to force his way inside. He looked at the windows along the back wall, wondering which one would be best to break. He stopped at the window into the family room. The window was the largest at the back, and breaking it would give him more room to enter the house. He broke a branch from the tree he was about to trim and examined the window. Since he was barefoot, he needed a way to get through the broken window glass, which he could break. He pulled 2 chairs from the back porch and placed them next to the window. He thought he could climb over the chairs to avoid the glass and then just be careful when he entered the living room. A few deep breaths, and he was ready to go. Franklin threw a branch through the family room window and it shattered with a satisfying crack, followed immediately, unfortunately for Franklin, by the wailing sound of the home alarm system siren. To make things even more unfortunate, the police car just happened to be driving down his street, as Molly had called the local police station that morning to complain about potential break-ins in their area. Damn, Franklin muttered, trying to quickly climb over the chairs to get into the house and disable the damn security system, but not fast enough. "Police! Stop right there and slowly walk away from the house. Raise your hands up." Franklin looked back and saw 2 policemen with pistols. He did as he was told and only cut his legs slightly as he climbed off the chairs and backed away. "Officers, I can explain," he began to say when one of the policemen put his hands behind his back and handcuffed him. The policeman ignored his attempt to explain himself and read out his rights. The policeman then asked if he wanted to say anything. Yes, this is my house and I, don't have a key, so I broke in to get some clothes and call my office." The cops were looking at Franklin's tracksuit, perhaps thinking clown clothes, when one of them asked him if he had any identification. No, not now. You see, I lost my car and all my clothes and stuff, and I just need to get inside so I can get some real clothes." "How did you lose your car, sir?" Well, last night I stayed at a friend's house, and this morning the car, wasn't there." "It just wasn't, huh? Have you reported a mysterious disappearance? Maybe you left it in a bar somewhere?" Franklin was stumped. He didn't want to reveal where he was or why he didn't report the car missing, but he also didn't want to go to jail for trying to break into his own home. and the handcuffs were really uncomfortable. Then he came up with a solution that might work. You can call my wife. She can identify me, and perhaps you could take me to my office. I can ask someone there to help me get some clothes. He knew he'd put up with a lot of crap at the dealership, but it was a lot better than going to jail. One of the cops took Molly's phone number from Franklin and went to call her. Franklin could hear the police part of the conversation. "Ma'am, this is Riles from the Charlotte Police Department. We are at the address." He gave the address. "And we have a man here who claims to be your husband. He tried to break into your house because he lost his clothes and—" "Yes, ma'am?" "No, ma'am." Yes, ma'am. We will, of course, do this." "Thank you, ma'am." He turned back to Franklin. "The lady says her husband is in Atlanta, and anyone who breaks into her house must be a burglar. She hopes we throw you in jail and throw away the key. But... Franklin was almost crying as the cops led him to their patrol car to take him to the station. And Camilla. She arrived at her office half a day late, but she will make up for lost time. Still thinking about Max, since she still hadn't heard from him, she called his cell phone, but no one answered. She then called his office again. "Hello, Sheila," Camilla again. "I'm starting to get a little worried about Max since I still haven't heard anything from him. And you?" "No, I have nothing new. I guess this means he's still in New York with the lawyers, but it's really not like him to not call. You do seem a little worried, so I'll call there and check on him, and either he or I will call you back in a few minutes. Fine?" "Thank you, Sheila. You are the best secretary in the world." A few minutes later, Camilla actually received a call back. "Camilla, this is Sheila. I talked to one of the secretaries at the law office, and she said Max left late yesterday, hoping to catch the last flight to Charlotte. So I called Max on his cell phone to check on him. I did talk to him, and he asked me to tell him that he would call later." "Fine." "Thank you, Sheila. Thank you," Camille said, disconnected. A snake began to grow in the depths of her stomach. Max hung up after talking to Sheila. He was driving a gold Mercedes to see a divorce lawyer recommended by Fred Thomas, his longtime business lawyer. He trusted his business lawyer and hoped he could trust his divorce lawyer. "Mr. Thronder, please take a seat." "Miss Reinhardt will be with you in a minute," the secretary told him. He sat down, somewhat reassured by the lawyer's office. No expensive furniture, but not cheap-looking either. Before he had time to worry further, a 50-year-old, somewhat plump lady with obviously dyed red hair entered the waiting room. "Mr. Thronder?" Max stood up and nodded, and she continued, "I'm Anna Reinhardt. Fred called and told me to take the best possible care of you. Let's go into my office and talk about your situation." Max followed her into a nice but not luxurious office, took coffee from the secretary, and told his story. He found a cheating wife, wanted a divorce, and also wanted to protect his assets, especially the proceeds from the sale of his company and his sister's company. He skipped the part of the story that concerned the golden Mercedes, although he suspected that Anna might find it funny. "Max, is it okay if I call you that?" He nodded, and she continued, "And I'm Anna. Good news, well, relatively good news considering your situation. Fred told me that you and your sisters owned your company before you married your wife, so your shares are considered separate property. That is, your wife has no rights to the shares of your company or to the proceeds of the sale. But you need to keep the shares and sale proceeds separate from any joint account you and your wife may have. This is true?" "I think so. But what about our house, retirement accounts, and the like?" "Well, there's not such good news for you. Since your salary is much higher than hers, you will be paying some child support for several years. We can probably avoid paying anything into the retirement account by increasing the amount of alimony. I know it's not attractive, but the short-term pain avoids what's usually worse, having to share your retirement money decades in the future. And your kids are in college, so no child support. I assume you don't mind being on the hook for the rest of their college expenses?" "Yes, that's suitable." "What about the house?" "You and your wife must decide what you want. You may decide to sell it and split the proceeds, or one of you can buy the other's portion based on the current appraised value. After what I saw last night, I definitely don't want this house. I don't think Camilla can afford to buy my half, so I guess that means selling. Okay, I can do the paperwork this way. The divorce petition is a pretty standard form, so I can have it ready for you tomorrow, early if you'd like, so we can serve it to her tomorrow afternoon. A proposed settlement could then follow next week. God, that's pretty fast. Mr. Thronder, Max, listen to me. If there's a chance for you and your wife that some counseling or just a little time could... No, actually, it's just a shock for me. I mean, less than 24 hours ago, I was happy. I couldn't wait to get home to my wife and tell her the good news about the sale of the company. And now I'm sitting here talking about filing for divorce, but we must move forward. I'll figure out how to deal with this. Okay, but if you change your mind, just call me and we can work things out. Max thanked her, paid the advance, and left the office. He walked back to the gold Mercedes, wondering a bit about what was going on with that asshole he'd seen last night. And that reminded him that he had told his secretary that he would call Camille. Camille answered the phone in her office at the law firm where she worked. Camilla, this is Max. You called and looked for me. Oh, Max, thanks for calling. I missed you. Where are you? I'm here in Charlotte, Camille. When did you get back? The snake deep in her belly raised its head. Last night, Camilla. I came back last night. And the snake bit. A little harsh. Camilla leaned back in her chair. She knew she had to carry on this conversation, but she could barely breathe, let alone speak. Camilla, I'm hanging up now. No, Max, no, she managed to squeeze out. Please, please. Can we meet somewhere? I need to see you and... just see you for a few minutes. Max hesitated. This woman was his love, the mother of his daughters, the most important person in his life for over 20 years. Okay, Camilla, the Center Cafe is at 6. The snake bit even harder. Camilla had to agree, but the Center Cafe was the place where she and Max had met a long time ago, both of them hanging out with friends. Since then, this cafe had become a special place for them, and now she was afraid why Max had suggested this, but she had to say yes. Max, I'll see you there, and please listen. I'm sorry, and I love you. Max hung up. Camilla sat and cried, and the snake bit more and more. Camilla came to the cafe early. Max was not there yet. She ordered a glass of wine and sat there thinking about what a terrible person she was. Her first real sexual experiences were with big, strong football players in college. She played around in high school, but it took those college football players holding her down, making her feel helpless. When Max arrived, she thought she had overcome this need to feel helpless. Max was everything she needed. Strong in bed, loving, a great father to the girls, a good provider. That would have been enough if it weren't for the plane ride back to Charlotte from the West Coast. Max was visiting some pharmaceutical company trying to sell a new drug, and she accompanied him for the weekend before his meetings began. Flying home alone on an overnight flight, she sat next to a large man, the coach of what turned out to be a local NFL team. They chatted, drank too much, and she fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. She woke up with his hand between her legs, under her skirt. Now, thinking about that night, she knew she should have screamed or at least pushed his hand away. But no, Camilla didn't do that. And the feeling of guilt? She didn't remember feeling guilty, only relief that Max didn't return until later that week when she and her body had recovered. The pussy had a feeling of guilt. This coach only worked in Charlotte for one season, and Camille might have become a faithful wife again if he had not introduced her to a forward from the practice squad before leaving. Not a star, not even a newbie, but just as strong and dominant in bed as the coach was. Camilla was actually grateful when she was assigned. After some time, the guilt finally surfaced. She wanted to remain faithful to Max and broke up with her lover. Camille thought she was done with her cheating by the time their girls left for college. She loved Max dearly and enjoyed the extra time they had together when the girls were away. But the snake slithered in when Max did something nice for it. He told her it was time for her to get a new car, a luxury car that she should choose, and unfortunately, she decided to go to the Mercedes dealership, where she met Franklin Thompson. He didn't sell her a Mercedes, but he pushed all the right buttons to get her into bed, and she knew it was wrong. Wrong. Also because Franklin wasn't that good in bed. She had gotten away with her previous affairs and thought the marriage was intact. But now she and Max loved each other more than ever, and she wanted to be faithful. This was the right thing, and not have sex with a big idiot. Letting Franklin spend the night in his marital bed would have been a terrible mistake, even if Max hadn't discovered them. But she had let him, and now she feared the terrible price she might have to pay. "Hello, Camilla." Camille looked up and saw Max standing there. He looked much older than he did before he flew to New York, and she knew it was her fault. The snake in her stomach continued to bite. "Hi, Max. Thank you for being here. I don't even know how to begin to say how sorry I am." "Can I ask a few questions?" he said, sitting down. "Oh, Max, please no. If we have any chance, questions and answers will simply kill that chance. Max, we should run away, just for a few days, to some island in the Caribbean, where we can be reunited, where we can hug each other, where—" "Camilla, please. You're delusional. If you can't answer my questions, I'll get up and leave now." The snake continued to bite, but Camille knew she had to endure the pain and let Max vent the way he wanted. Maybe, just maybe, he could come out the other side of his anger to some kind of reconciliation. "Okay, Max. Ask me anything." "Do you know what time I got home last night?" Strange question, she thought. No, not really. It had to be after—" She shut up. She knew what his next question would be, and it was, "And do you know what I saw when I got home? When I went upstairs to our bedroom? Or should I say, what used to be our bedroom?" "Yes, Max, I know what you must have seen. And I know it must have been one of the worst things you've ever seen in your entire life, and I know it's entirely my fault. That you saw this, and I am begging you to please listen to me. Max, I'm sorry. So sorry that I won't fight the divorce you want. If you want—" "Shut up, Camilla." "Next question. How many men have there been since we got married? If you're lying, if I think you're lying, I get up and leave." Camilla's first thought was to lie. The second thought was that lying was too risky, and the third thought was that the marriage was probably over anyway. 3, Max. 3 men whom I now regret having ever met. I think I can see in your eyes that our marriage is over, and I understand it. You deserve someone better than me. I'm willing to do almost anything to give us another chance, but I understand if you don't want anything to do with me anymore. Call the lawyer, Camilla. Tomorrow you will be served with divorce papers." Max got up and left. Camille sat there, too stunned to even cry at first. While she was thinking about what Max had just said, the snake in her stomach bit hard, and she actually started crying. Max walked out of the cafe, remembering how he and Camille first met there, decades ago, and wondering if this meeting would be the last time they ever had any kind of intimate conversation. Intimacy, he thought bitterly, must be the worst kind of intimacy, hearing your wife say that she had sex with other men, and to see her with that toad Franklin, in their bed, in their fucking bed, sleeping, her snoring. For God's sake, how am I ever going to get over this? Perhaps he could handle 3 faceless men in the 20-odd years they had been together. Just maybe with some counseling and a lot of humiliation on her part, maybe. But he would never get over that scene in their bed. Their marriage was over. And sitting in that damn gold Mercedes, he finally cried. At some point, Max realized that it was already getting dark. He blew his nose, wiped his face, and thought about what Molly Thompson had said that morning, which now seemed like a year ago. She told him not to send her pictures of her husband sleeping with Camilla. She felt that it would be much more difficult to forgive if she were confronted with visual evidence. Max decided to call her, share this thought with her, and check the situation with Mercedes. "Hello," Molly answered the call. "Molly, this is Max Tronder, from this morning. I'm just calling to see how you're doing and what I should do with the car. Max, thank you for calling. I seem to be holding on. You can keep the car for now. Franklin is in so much trouble that he won't need her for a while. Trouble? I hope you didn't shoot him. No, but he might prefer this option. He got arrested for trying to break into our house and apparently took a swing at one of the cops. You know, he's a big guy, and the cop hit him with a stun gun. Then something happened while he was in prison. He doesn't want to talk about it, but I think he may have been attacked by another prisoner somehow. I wouldn't talk to him, and he ended up having to call his brother to post bail, and that means his whole family knows what's going on. Wow. Molly, I can't say I feel sorry for him, but I feel sorry for you. What I really want to say is that you made the absolutely right decision this morning not to look at the pictures of him cheating. If you have any chance of reconciling, these photos would make it a lot harder. Yeah, he finally came home a couple of hours ago, crying and telling me how sorry he was and begging me to let him stay, at least for now. You know, we have 2 little kids, so I'm going to try to figure this out. But life won't be easy for him. His own brother, who is a lawyer, told me that I should push for a prenuptial agreement, and he said he would help with that. Besides, I'm going to be in control of our finances, at least for a while. Franklin will be on a fairly short leash, and I plan to tug his collar frequently. Keep it up, Molly. I wish you all the best, and when you need to return the car, just call me. They hung up, and Max sat there, somewhat jealous of Molly. Perhaps Franklin learned his lesson. Being arrested and charged with assault for trying to hit a police officer on top of what happened to him in prison may have scared him a lot. Max hoped so, for the sake of Molly and their children. Finally, he drove back to the motel where he was staying. He had one more job to do before he tried to sleep. Call his daughters, Jane and Joan. "Hi, Daddy." It seemed to him that Jane answered. They were twins, not identical, but they might as well have been identical. They sounded alike. They went to a very expensive college together. They studied the same thing, nursing. At least they didn't look exactly alike. Close and obviously sisters, but not so obvious twins. Max often admitted, but only to himself, that he was happy that they were not identical. They were very good at ganging up on him, and he thought it would be even worse if 2 identical young women were forcing him to buy a car, getting him to stay out late, asking for money to go to Florida for spring break, which, whatever the request of the day is, "Daddy, please." But he also admitted, again, only to himself, that he enjoyed spoiling them. "Janie?" "Yes, you guessed correctly. Of course, there was a 50-50 chance. What's the matter?" "Listen, tomorrow is Saturday, and I would like to invite you and your sister to have breakfast. Well, let's call it brunch, maybe around 11 or so. That bistro on 4th Street we used to go to." That suits me. Wait a second." He heard a noise, and then she came back. "And Joan is fine, too. Can we—" He quickly interrupted her because 6 or 7 of their friends were present at their last brunch. "Let's do this, just the 3 of us, okay?" "Of course," Jane replied. "But tell me what—" And again he interrupted her, not wanting to start a conversation on the phone, which was quite difficult even in person. "Listen, I need to run. See you at 11. Love you, and tell your sister I love her too. Bye." And he hung up. He hoped she wouldn't call Camilla, but he couldn't tell her that. Then she would have called Camilla immediately. 11 o'clock tomorrow morning will come quickly enough. After Max left the cafe, leaving her with his warning or curse or whatever to hire a lawyer, Camille's tears were hard to stop. She knew she had screwed up everything. Her marriage, her family, her whole life. She knew that her daughters would find out, her parents would know, all her friends would know. She would probably lose Max and her home. And Max, poor Max, seeing her lying in their bed, naked, probably with that damn Franklin who had a boner. This scene must have nearly killed Max, and Camille's tears continued. Finally, the waitress came over and asked if she needed to go to the ladies' room. Camilla choked back her sobs and managed to say, "No, thank you." She paid the bill and left, heading to the house that would soon no longer be her home. When she got there, she found some gin, just the wrong amount. Not enough to make her pass out, but too much to help her figure out how to get Max back. After she drank it all, it helped her fall asleep, hoping for some miracle that would bring Max back to her. Max was sitting in the bistro at 11 o'clock the next morning when his daughters entered. He reviewed and approved the draft divorce petition early in the morning, then drove 2 hours from Charlotte, using that time to figure out how and what to say to Jane and Joan. But first, everything is as usual. Hugs and kisses. How is school? How is work? Food ordered and eaten, plates cleared, and then, finally, real conversation. "Dad, we know something is wrong," Joan began. "You look a little sick. Are you here to tell us you have cancer or something? And if so, where is Mom?" "Girls, yes, I have really bad news, but nothing physical. No one is going to die and—" "It's Mom," Jane interrupted. "She did something terrible. Oh my God. Did she run off with one of her firm's lawyers? A young, strong body that Joni or I should be chasing?" Both girls burst out laughing, taken aback by the absurdity of the idea, until they saw that their father was not laughing. "Dad, no, not Mom, no." Joan couldn't finish her fear out loud. "Girls, listen to me carefully. Yes, Mom changed. She cheated on me, but that doesn't mean she cheated on you girls." "Yes, that's right, Daddy," Joan said through tears. "If her cheating is destroying our family, then yes, she cheated on us just as much as she cheated on you." Both girls cried, and then Max started crying too. The girls stood up and tried to hug their dad and hug each other at the same time. "Dad, let's get out of here," Jane said. "There's a park about 2 blocks from here, and we'll have more privacy there." People were staring a bit, so Max quickly paid the bill, and they walked into the park, a girl on each side of him, all of them holding each other. "Tell us, Dad," Jane said after they found a bench to share. "We deserve to hear how bad it is." "You know she's right," Joan intervened. "We are quite mature and can handle this." "On the way here, I was racking my brains over what to tell you," Max began. "I agree. You are both adults. And yes, you are right. Your mother did cheat on all of us. I'm afraid I found my mother at home in our bed with another man, and she later admitted that there had been other men before him. I think I'm still in a bit of shock, but I know that she and I won't be able to recover from this. I've already talked to a divorce lawyer, and Mom is getting a divorce petition today." More tears, and then finally silence, as they all thought about the news and what their future would be like. "Girls, no matter how bad it is, you need to put yourself and your schoolwork first. Enough money to pay for your senior year here at Duke. And if either or both of you want to do graduate work, I suspect I can find some money for that too. But there is a quid pro quo here." They looked at him. What did he mean? "I'm happy to pay for your education, but I expect you to work hard and get good grades. Yes, what Mom did makes it difficult to concentrate on school, but you told me that you are adults, and real adults, mature, disciplined people can handle such adversity. Right?" They looked at each other, cried again, and hugged him. Yes, Daddy, you are the best, and we absolutely, positively will not let you down." Joan encouraged him while Jane looked thoughtful. "Dad, Joan is right. We won't let you down. But what about you? Will you be okay? What are you going to do?" "Well, you can think about a lot in a 2-hour drive. First, I want you both to know that what you said does not surprise me at all. I know you will continue to do well in school, and I will continue to be proud of you. As for me, what my mother did beat me up pretty bad. I could crawl into a hole and just, suffer, feel sorry for myself, try to find a way to make peace with your mom. But I realized that this doesn't suit me. I've spent my entire adult life caring for other people. When I started working for my grandparents' company, I took care of them. And then after they left, I took care of my sisters as they owned their shares in the company. And then I took care of my mom, and I took care of you girls. It sounds like I'm complaining, but I'm really not. The company will soon be sold, and this will relieve me of responsibility for my sisters." Camilla left. "And you guys, I promise that I will be happy to take care of you, to help you start your adult life. So what? 2 home runs out of 3 in terms of the women in my life. Not bad at all. That leaves me. And guess what? I look at this whole story with betrayal and divorce, not as the worst thing in my life, but as a chance to start a new life. A whole new life dedicated to caring for one person, me, Fine. Dad, really? I mean, if you really mean what you say, that's great, Joan said. Jane was a little more skeptical. Dad, what does all this really mean? New life? What? Work for another pharmaceutical company? Are you buying a farm? What? Good question, and I really have a good answer. No details yet, but this new life will be physical. I'm going to run marathons, climb mountains, swim across the Atlantic, climb the Alps, go on safari. I have a million things I'm going to do. And guess what? While I'm doing these things, I might meet a nice woman doing the same thing. And who knows? Damn it, Dad, this is amazing. Both girls looked at him with their mouths open. This was their father, not some enterprising stallion. Did you really come up with all this while driving here from Charlotte? Asked Jane. Well, yes, partly, but besides, I didn't sleep much, and different ideas were spinning in my head. I mean, I could start drinking and feeling sorry for myself, but instead, I'm going to make the best of this mess. Trust me, I'll be fine. Max left his girls with more hugs and kisses and tears as he headed back to Charlotte, still in the gold Mercedes. As soon as Max left, the girls called their mother on the phone. Hello? A creaky voice answered the phone in the Tronders' house. Joan put her phone on speaker. Mom, this is Joan and Jane. We had just had breakfast with Dad, and he told us some terrible news. What did he say? Well, divorce was a terrible word, and the reason was your betrayal. Dad gave us a little more detail, but that's basically it. This is true? Oh, girls, this is difficult. He and I have been married for a long time, and this mistake. Yes, I made a big mistake. Well, more than one, actually. But I'm sure we can get through it. I just need to give your father some time to... Mom, Joan interrupted. Listen. Dad said divorce. He didn't talk about fixing the error. Mom, he was talking about cheating. Well, yes, technically he's right. But that doesn't mean we can't fix it. I told him I would do anything. Mom! It was Jane's turn to interrupt. I think you're delusional. He told us that he had already met with a divorce lawyer. He actually said there was no turning back for you two. Joan and I don't want to take sides, but you have to understand reality. Tormented breathing on the other end of the line. Joan and Jane looked at each other. Should they have gone to Charlotte? Finally, Camilla spoke, not much louder than a whisper. I know I screwed up and ruined my marriage. I think your father hates me, and he's right. I've done disgusting things. He told me to hire a lawyer, and he was right about that too. I'm sorry, girls. I know it's terrible for you too. Mom, don't worry about us, Joan said. Everything will be fine with us, and I know that Dad is doing everything in his power. You need to take care of yourself. Hiring a lawyer sounds like a good idea. Jane and I can go to Charlotte if you need it. Thank you, girls. This is nice. I'll be okay. I just need some time to get used to what I did. They hung up. The girls still didn't know what to do. You know, Joan said, it's funny, although it's not funny, but we're more worried about Mom, who created all this mess, than about Dad. They talked some more, eventually deciding not to go home, but to let their parents deal with each other without their daughters interfering. Camilla sat in her home in Charlotte, a little hungover from the gin she'd drunk the night before and more than a little depressed after talking to her daughters. She knew she had to get up, get dressed, and leave the house. Do something, she thought. As her thoughts turned to perhaps buying some more gin, the doorbell rang. Camilla opened the door. A young woman stood on the threshold. She looked like she was chewing gum. Can I help you? Camilla asked. Yes, ma'am. Are you Camilla Tronder, Max Tronder's wife? Why, yes, it's me. Why are you asking? Ma'am, you have been served, the woman said, handing Camille a folder with documents and taking photographs. What? What? Camille asked as the woman walked back to her car. Camille returned to the house and sat down at the kitchen table to look at the mysterious folder. When she saw the title of the first document, she almost fainted. A petition for divorce. She remembered Max's last words to her, get a lawyer. As she sat there looking at the familiar kitchen she had enjoyed with Max, She knew the happy days wouldn't come back after what she had done. Camilla was right. She and Max did not return after her betrayal. 6 years later, sitting in the ballroom of an expensive hotel and watching Jane dance with her new husband, Camilla mentally plunged into the past. When the girls were teenagers, she thought life was terrible. Too many activities, too much teenage angst because too many boys were either too mean or, from Camille's point of view, too nice to the girls. Max was too busy with her assistant job, and lawyer is too boring. Life had been overwhelming then, but now she missed it terribly. She was still working at the same law firm, doing the same boring paperwork. She dreamed. Camilla, here is your wine. Camille looked at her beau, the perfectly sweet middle-aged, paunchy, balding lawyer who had escorted her to Janie's wedding and reception. The bride looks lovely, just like her mother. Thank you, Carl, you're sweet, and thanks for the wine. He was a sweet man, and she could imagine marrying him if he was interested, but he definitely wasn't Max. She couldn't help but look across the room at Max. Max had just returned from a mountaineering trip to Nepal, and Camilla thought he looked like one of those bronze Greek god statues. Tanned, incredibly fit, even more handsome than she remembered. Right now he was smiling and laughing with Joan and her boyfriend, holding hands with a woman as beautiful and as fit as Max. Joan told her that Max had met the woman on another mountaineering trip, somewhere in South America, and they had been traveling, sailing, and climbing together for several months. Camille felt sick just thinking about it. Camilla! Carl tried to attract her attention. Yes, Carl? Camilla, I think we should leave. You've fulfilled your duties as mother of the bride, and staying here drooling over your ex-husband isn't doing you any favors, and I dare say this is not very good for the relationship that we have with you. Carl, you're sweet, and you're absolutely right. Let me go say goodbye to my daughters and we'll be out of here. Camilla hugged and kissed her daughters, wished the newlyweds all the best, and, as hard as it was for her, ignored Max and his too-cute girlfriend. Max actually saw Camille as she left the hall and felt a slight pang of sadness for their old times together. While he was watching her, Joan asked him a question. Sorry, Joni, what were you saying? Daddy, remember that strange-looking gold Mercedes you were driving when you, Jane, and I had breakfast that morning when you came to visit us at Duke? What happened to that car? Ah, Joni, that's a whole story that I won't bore you with. Let me just say that I borrowed this weird gold Mercedes from a friend and ended up giving it back to her. I think she sold it. It was truly an unlucky car. And Max turned to his friend to talk about their next trip to the mountains. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. I leaned back in my chair, looked around the room and thought, so many beautiful women in the room. Why did Marc Lavaliere choose my wife? Why did she say yes? Why did she leave me? Our children were getting older and more self-sufficient. They won't be home soon, and Linda and I have already discussed what we'd like to do when the kids aren't home. Many months ago, a small part of my mind wondered what the relationship between Linda and I would be like. Of course, I assumed that we would be able to spend more quality time together, becoming closer, and then it hit me like a proverbial ton of bricks. Linda's plans for the future may not include my presence. I felt like a complete fool. That thought evaporated all my sadness and disappointment, leaving me with only my anger. I could tell from the worried looks from those around the table that my facial expression gave them the impression that my head was about to explode, or that I was about to do something very, very stupid. Dee asked nervously, "Are you okay, Jim?" 4 beautiful young women sat in a booth at the other end of the dance floor. I could see them right over Dee's shoulder. Why didn't Marc Lavaliere choose one of them? I watched the 4 ladies for a moment. Then I started laughing, very loud. Everyone at the table looked scared by my laughter. I laughed so hard that people were looking at our table. I had tears streaming down my face. When my laughter finally died down, I wiped away my tears and gave everyone a big smile. I realized that my life had just changed dramatically. I was no longer in a monogamous relationship. I no longer had to worry about my wife's feelings because my wife no longer cared about mine. Everyone stared at me. I smiled at Dee, took the wedding ring off my finger and handed it to the amazed Dee. "Tell this to Linda when you see her." "I have things to do." I stood up and threw a 10 on the table. "This is for my drink. Since you encouraged Linda's cheating so much, you can pay for it." When I left the table, my former friends called me. As I left the club, I wondered what I would say to them if they tried to follow me. The only thing I was sure of was that if any of the husbands followed me and did not heed my warning, I would break their nose. As I walked, my thoughts were racing. Linda was going to have selfish fun. I was going to have selfish fun myself. When I arrived at the hotel, I asked the young woman at the front desk if they had any full-size suites available. She told me no, but if I was looking for a bigger room, there would be a honeymoon suite available. She listed many of the amenities available in the room. "I will take him. We will not be able to rent out the room you're in now, since it is already late at night. I'll pay for both rooms. My wife will be staying in the original room and I will be staying in the suite." The young woman looked at me strangely for a moment. "I thought you were doing something special for your wife." After she gave me the key card to my new room and directions to get there, I told her, "If my wife asks for the key to my room, don't give it to her. In fact, could you please leave specific instructions so that no one tells my wife that I'm still at the hotel if she asks?" The young girl had a curious look and a smile on her face. "I will make sure that the hotel staff is informed of your request." I went up to my old room and collected my clothes, leaving all of Linda's clothes and personal items in the trash cans. I took the elevator to the top floor. The honeymoon suite was huge, and even had a jacuzzi on the large balcony overlooking the city. I bought an expensive tuxedo with me in case we decided to drink late at one of the more fashionable restaurants nearby. I put on my jacket and headed back to the club, stopping at the ATM to withdraw some cash. When I returned to the club, there was a long line to get in. I approached the doorman as if I owned the place. He asked if he could help me. I smiled at him and gave him a $100 bill. He smiled back, opened the door, and let me in. My former friends were sitting at the table when I entered. I looked around the club, hoping to see what I had seen before. A table at the side of the dance floor with 4 beautiful young women sitting at it. There weren't any men with them, so it must have been some kind of bachelorette party. Perfect for me. I walked through the entire club. Dee noticed me as I walked past the table and tried to wave and call me by name. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. I paid no attention to them as I crossed the hall and casually approached a table with 4 ladies. For what reason are 4 beautiful ladies sitting unaccompanied? All 4 ladies smiled at me. The taller brunette laughed loudly and said, "We're here with our girlfriend. The stupid guy left her for some bitch, and we're cheering her on." The brunette was definitely tipsy. "Well, if you don't mind, lady, I'd love to dance with your friend and get a chance to cheer her up." Ace turned to the petite red-haired girl. She smiled and extended her hand to me so that I could help her out of the booth. When we started dancing, I asked her name. "Samantha." "My name is Jim. How could you date such an idiot that he could let such a beautiful woman go?" "Because he's an asshole." I laughed and smiled at her. We talked a little while dancing. She went to college to become a nurse and grew up nearby. The song ended and a slower song began. We continued to dance. The music was not so loud, and Samantha asked, "Are you married, Jim?" We broke up. "Was it your wife who danced with Mark Lavalier earlier?" I noticed that she disappeared after that dance. You noticed this, right? Everyone in the club noticed it, Jim. I gave Samantha my best smile. "I think you found out that we broke up at the same moment that I found out." Samantha smiled warmly at me, and we danced very close until the end of the song. We had both recently been hurt by someone we cared about, and it felt good to hold each other. When the song ended, we returned to Samantha's table. Samantha said to the others at the table, "I know we agreed that no men would sit with us, but I want Jim to stay with us." Brunette, clearly trying to play with me and Samantha, "I don't know. We agreed that there would be no guys." How about I buy a couple bottles of champagne to make up for it? I don't know. A deal is a deal. Samantha smiled at all three and said, "We saw Mark Lavaliere leave with his wife." Three voices at once shouted out, "Not a damn thing!" Three ladies walked around the booth to make room for Samantha and me. Before I could get any names, the blonde next to Samantha asked, "Do you guys have an open marriage?" "Absolutely not." Then another blonde asked, "What did she tell you?" "Nothing. She told me she went to the toilet and snuck out through the back of the club with Mark." I pointed my thumb over my shoulder without turning around. "And all my former asshole friends covered for her." At that moment, the waitress came over. I asked if everyone liked champagne, and everyone smiled. "2 bottles of your most expensive champagne." The girls applauded. Before they could ask me another question, I introduced myself. Their names were Kim, Christy, and Susan. They were all studying to be nurses with Samantha. After the champagne arrived and everyone drank a full glass, Christy, the brunette, asked me what I was going to do with my wife. As far as I understand, we broke up the moment she walked out the door. "Do you have children?" "Unfortunately, yes. A boy and a girl, 15 and 13 years old. But in a few more years, they will be left to their own devices, and I am going to change my wife." Samantha took my arm and said loudly, "To hell with it! You're with me tonight." We all clinked glasses and drank champagne. I told the girls a few jokes. They told me several jokes. We laughed and drank. They danced with some guys and with each other. Samantha remained sitting with me, her arm wrapped around me. Towards the end of the evening, Christy got angry, jumped up from the table, and ran away. We all turned to see where she was going. It turned out that Dee decided to come talk to me. But Christy stopped her near my ex-friend's table. We couldn't hear what was said, but we could see them talking loudly to each other. It ended after Christy started poking Dee's chest multiple times while screaming in Dee's face. Dee cried and sat down again. Christy then lashed out at everyone at the table. All the tables around them laughed at the embarrassment of my former friends. When Christy returned, Kim and Susan high-fived her. Christy drank champagne, smiled at me, and said, "None of these idiots are going anywhere near this table for the rest of the evening." I turned around and looked at their table. They all got up to leave. Jane and Dee were both crying. None of them looked in our direction. "What did you say, Christy?" "I saw this woman gain the courage to come and talk to you. So I pushed her away and let them know what I thought about people who help cheaters. You made a great impression. They clearly wanted me to forgive Linda to ease their conscience. For this, I have to kiss you." Samantha grabbed my head and said, "Oh, no, you shouldn't." And she kissed me hard on the lips, while the other 3 girls encouraged her. After finishing her kiss, Samantha smiled sweetly at me. Kim said, "Get a room, you two." "Well, actually," I said, "I have a suite in a hotel down the block, and you ladies look like you can't drive. If we hurry up, we can still order champagne to our room." After I paid the bar tab, the 4 of us headed to the hotel. Samantha clung to my arm, and the other 3 clung to us for support. At the reception, I ordered 4 bottles of champagne for my room. When I told the receptionist that my room was a honeymoon suite, all the ladies started giggling. Rising in the elevator, the 3 ladies began to sing the wedding march. Samantha turned beet red, but clung to me even tighter. As we approached the door of the room, the ladies began to laugh, saying that I should carry the bride over the threshold. Samantha looked at me with her big, beautiful eyes and said, "You don't have to if you don't want to." I pushed the door open, picked Samantha up in my arms, and carried her into the room. When I entered the room, Samantha put her arms around my neck and kissed me deeply. The ladies thought it was funny. They stopped teasing us when Christy noticed the jacuzzi on the balcony. Before I could put Samantha down, all 3 of them had stripped down to their bras and panties and were sitting in the jacuzzi. I put Samantha on the ground. She continued to hold my hand and smile at me. There was a knock on the door. "It was champagne delivered to your room." We brought champagne to the ladies. They joked and giggled. Susan told me I was overdressed and needed to take it all off. I laughed and told them I was keeping Samantha company. They yelled at Samantha to get into the jacuzzi, but she just smiled and pulled me back to the room. We headed to the bridal room, and her friends sang the wedding march from the balcony, laughing hysterically. This morning I woke up with Samantha wrapped around me and 3 other naked ladies lying across a king-sized bed. They must have gotten in here after Samantha and I fell asleep. I slipped out of bed. Samantha watched me. I smiled at her, and she smiled back. "Did you have fun, Jim?" "Yes. Best night of my life." "Any regrets?" "Absolutely none." "Come take a shower with me." Samantha slipped out of bed and dragged me to the bathroom. Wanting to do something I'd never done with Linda, as soon as we were in the shower, I picked Samantha up and sat her on my cock in a standing position. I then pushed her against the wall while she wrapped her legs around my waist. The standing position was grueling, but I had one of the best orgasms of my life. Samantha had come twice before, very loudly. When Samantha and I got out of the shower, we discovered that our loud lovemaking had woken up the ladies. They were hungover but happy, ordering room service and drinking mimosas. Christy said, "I can't wait to get in that shower." You two made it sound like it was the best shower ever. All 3 girls burst out laughing as Samantha and I smiled at each other. After everyone had showered, they left, except for Samantha, who asked if I would give her a ride home. While we were driving, she snuggled up to me. "Jim, I know what your wife did was terrible, but you can still go back to her. If you don't, I'd be glad if we could see each other again." Samantha smiled at me hopefully. "I would be glad of that, Samantha. At the moment, I have no intention of staying with my ex-wife. I really had fun with you. You are what I need right now, so call me if you think we can be together." I kissed Samantha at her door. When she opened the door, Christy was sitting on the couch and smiled at me, waving. As I left, I realized that I was putting off making a decision about what to do with Linda. Returning to the club was a sudden reaction to Linda's infidelity. It didn't solve my problem with Linda, but it made me feel a lot better. When I got home, I took a break and plopped down in a chair in the living room. I didn't bother turning on the light because I was thinking about how to end my broken marriage with the least harm to my children. After a while, I have no idea how long, I heard a car in the driveway, then the key turning in the lock. Jim, I'm home." Her voice sounded exactly the same as it always did when she returned home from running errands. She closed the front door and turned on the light. I turned to look at her. She looked exactly the same. The blue dress still adorned her as in the evening. Dark hair flowed down his back in the same way. Poster shoulders, face, rings on fingers. Everything was exactly the same. It was as if nothing had changed at all, as if she hadn't spent all night and all morning betraying me with an asshole. This is impossible, I thought. There should be some visible difference, something indicating what she did, at least some shame on her face. There was nothing. "It's just me, the same old me as always," she said with a gentle smile. Of course she knew what I was thinking. "Nothing has changed here, nothing has changed. My love for you is exactly the same as yesterday." I wish I could say the same. Listening to myself, I realized how dispassionate it sounded. "Jim," with the look of a dead gentleman, I stared at Linda, pointing to our bedroom. "Do not start. Go take a shower." After trying to say a few words while I kept pointing towards our bedroom, Linda finally left. After her shower, she returned downstairs. "Jim, where are my clothes from last night?" "I think in the hotel room where you left it." "You didn't bring my clothes home?" "No. Did you leave something important there?" Linda looked like she was about to say something when she realized her next statement would be something about how inattentive I had been. Instead, she sat in silence as she realized how incredibly stupid that would sound. "Why did you do that, Linda?" Linda sighed. "It was Mark Lavaliera. He is rich and famous and can have any woman he wants. Last night, when he asked me to dance, I felt like the most popular girl in the room. He made me feel special." Linda was still beaming from the night before. As she said this, I saw that she had tuned out our conversation as she fondly recalled moments from the previous night. This was that moment when I realized it was truly over. Linda will always cherish her time with Mark Lavaliere more than any moment with me. I was just an afterthought. Do you love him? No, I don't love him. It was just sex. I love you, Jim. You and I have completely different understandings of how to treat the person you love. I could tell by the surprised look on Linda's face that she felt entitled. I was just being a crybaby because my ego was hurt, which was sad because she crushed my ego purely to feed hers. I came back to you, Jim, because I love you. If he asked you to stay, to become his girlfriend or wife, would you be here now? Linda hesitated, then noticed that I was watching. Of course not. I love you, Jim. You hesitated, Linda. I understand what this look means. You would have been there if he asked. It was just one night. It was just sex. The discussion is over. I have something to think about. Pack some things for you and the children and stay with your parents with them. Whole week. But Jim, the discussion is over. If you really want to urgently solve the problem right now, given the way I'm feeling, you won't get the results you're hoping for. This time there was anger in my voice and look. Linda packed her bag and left. As soon as she was out of sight, I began to implement my plan. I had an epiphany when I saw Linda standing at the entrance in her blue dress, looking completely unchanged. I knew something had to change if I was going to survive this. I called my boss and told him I needed 2 weeks off. I then rented a truck and bought some supplies at the hardware store: wood, drywall, paint, and 2 exterior doors. Once home, I grabbed mine scrap and got to work. First, I removed the front door and the windows surrounding the door. After cutting out a large empty space, I installed the 2 front doors. I placed the old front door on the right side and the new one on the left. I then framed the wall right along the main entrance in the middle of the house and laid down drywall. I was going to do a duplex. I installed a new back door on the left side where the new kitchen would be. The new kitchen would face the living room, just like the other side. The office turned into a 3rd bedroom on the left side, my side. The dining room became the 3rd bedroom on the right side, Linda's side. When I was finished, each side of the duplex matched almost exactly, except for the detached garage on Linda's side. Later, I will build another garage on my side. I changed the lock on the garage and the code on the garage door so that only I have access. I also put up a fence in the backyard, cutting the backyard exactly in half. Now I have a duplex. I called my kids every day and told them I was working around the house. Linda kept asking to talk, but I kept telling her that I was not in the mood to listen to what she had to say. I called Samantha a few days later just to hear her voice and maybe get a chance to spend more time with her. I thought you forgot about me. I cannot stop thinking about you. Are you going to ask me out on a date? No. Stop teasing me. No, I'm really not going to ask you out. I was thinking more about going away for the weekend, just you and me. Really? Yes. Where? The Bahamas sounds tempting. Can you go away this weekend, fly on Thursday and return on Tuesday? Yes, yes, yes! Just take your phone and passport with you. We will buy everything we need there. After we told each other how much fun we were going to have, I had to let her go so I could pay for my plane ticket and book a hotel room. A last-minute trip to the Bahamas didn't come cheap, but what the hell? If Linda divorces me, she gets half our savings and my salary to support the children. I smiled when I realized it was as if Linda was paying for half the trip with Samantha. I transferred our savings account to a bank account in my name only. I also changed my salary so that it was deposited into the account. I didn't think Linda would cancel the credit card, but I wanted to have access to the money just in case. I worked 16 hours a day to get all the walls in place, a little unfinished on my part. On Wednesday, I managed to trim and paint the center wall on Linda's side. I knew that later I would have to separate the electricity, gas, and water. But for now, since Linda's side shared the same gas and electricity, Linda couldn't turn off my side. On Wednesday night, I told Linda to bring the kids home in the morning. On Thursday morning, I locked up my part of the house and sat on a chair out front, waiting for them to arrive. When they arrived and got out of the car, they all stood on the front lawn in a daze. Emma was the first to speak. "Dad, what did you do?" "I turned our house into a duplex. Don't you like it?" All 3 turned and looked at me like I was an idiot. They stood there with their mouths open. "Don't worry, guys. I finished the right side and moved your things to your new rooms. I showed the kids the left side of the new house, while Linda carried the kids' bags to their rooms. They were dumbfounded. Our short tour ended with us all gathered in the living room on the right side of the house. Tommy, "But Dad, the living room is much smaller." "Don't worry, guys. You will never notice the difference. In fact, I need to install a garage on the other side of the house, and when I do that, I'm going to install a pool with a jacuzzi." This brought smiles to the children. Linda told the children to unpack their bags. She looked at me like she wanted to talk to me, but I followed the kids, helping them put their things away and make sure they had what they needed. After they put their things away, I pulled out some sandwiches I bought at a local deli, and we ate lunch at the kitchen table. Emma asked me, "Dad, what is this all about?" But mostly, she watched Linda's reaction. After spending the last few days with Linda, Emma and Tommy obviously knew something was wrong, and that their mother was avoiding their questions. "Oh, we're getting closer to becoming empty nesters. I realize that things won't stay the same forever. I'm just getting ready. That's all." "Gee, Dad, you could at least discuss this with us first to see how we feel about it." "Well, actually, it was your mom's idea. She said she decided we needed a change and she needed something different." I stared at Linda with a grin on my face. Linda looked amazed. "Mom, why did you make such an important decision and didn't discuss it with us?" asked Emma. Tommy, "Yes, Mom. Don't you care what we think?" Linda looking confused. "It was just a misunderstanding. Your father just misunderstood how I felt." "I don't know, honey. You made your intentions very clear then. In fact, once I saw that you were completely committed to your decision, I knew there was no turning back." Linda looked like she was about to cry and left the room. Tommy asked, "What's wrong with Mom lately? She's been crying about everything." I shrugged and told them they should ask her. Before Emma could ask another question, I told them that I had a trip out of town planned and would be back in a few days. I told them that I would not be contactable during my trip, but that I would call them every evening. I kissed the tops of their heads and quickly headed towards the door. I wondered if they noticed that I didn't say goodbye to their mom, who was in the bedroom. I picked Samantha up from her apartment and we hit the road. It was one of the best moments of my life. We flew first class, stayed at a 5-star resort, and were pampered like royalty. A weekend full of fun, sun, sand, waves, food, and drink. And even better, Samantha was very grateful and constantly tried to show how much she enjoyed being with me. By the time it was time to head back, we were both completely tanned, and I knew every inch of Samantha's fantastic body. On Tuesday, I dropped Samantha off at her apartment. Samantha kissed me very passionately at the front door. "Do you want to spend one more night with me?" "Yes, I would love to, but I need to meet face-to-face sometime, and you have classes tomorrow. Call me before you go to bed. I need to hear your voice before I go to bed." I kissed her for the last time and said, "With pleasure." I drove home, smiling to myself. Samantha told me last night that she could see herself falling in love with a guy like me. As I was driving down the street to my house, I saw Linda's car parked in her driveway. I parked on the road in front of my part of the house, wanting to avoid Linda. While I was unpacking, Linda knocked on my front door. "You arrived." "Yes, it is. Can we talk?" "Of course. What do you want to talk about?" "Can I come in?" "No. You are not allowed to be on my side. To be clear, this is my personal living space, and you are not welcome on this side. Never." Linda, clearly shocked, looked at me for a moment before turning to return to her room. The reality that I was not going to live on her side of the duplex had just become reality. We were both sitting at her kitchen table. "Jim, I love you, and I want everything to go back to normal. It will not happen." "Why?" "Because if you haven't noticed yet, you did something that changed the way I feel about you forever. It shouldn't be like this." "Actually, that's true. Nothing will undo what you did or how I feel about it." "But I love you." I collected my thoughts. "Let's say we were on a date as a couple with our friends. You left me and went with another man and spent the entire night and next morning having sex with him. If you had done this on our first date, would there have been a second? But Jim, it was Mark. I don't care who it was. You chose someone else over me. Jim, I keep trying to tell you that I didn't choose Mark over you. So you didn't choose to sneak out the back of the club. You didn't choose to have sex with Mark Lavaliere. It was just one night. You've had your whole life to show me how much you love me. The moment someone more famous spoke to you, I turned into trash. Does this mean I should keep you away from all famous athletes, famous actors, famous politicians? You know there's a marathon this weekend. Are you going to have sex with the winner? Jim, this isn't fair. In a quiet, even tone, I said, so here it is. Now you want me to be fair. You want a chance to minimize your betrayal, a good chance to talk me out of my anger over what you did, a good chance to shame me for feeling betrayed, a fair chance to accuse me of not putting our family before my own pain. I seem to be the only one who is expected to be fair in this relationship. I reached across the table and took her hand. She smiled and took my hand with both of hers. I looked deep into Linda's eyes, knowing I was going to hurt her. Linda needed to know exactly how our new relationship would develop in the future. And yes, I was also excited to show her what it was like. It's too late, Linda. Too late? Yes, too late. I found another one. No. Linda pulled her hands away from my palm as if my hand was on fire. Do you know who it is? I'm sure Dee and your friends told you who I was with that night after you left. The redhead I danced with. The one who held me tightly while we danced. The woman who replaced you on the anniversary you threw away. When the words replaced you and threw you away came to her, I looked into Linda's eyes and saw sadness. I realized that Dee must have sent Linda photos of Samantha and I slow dancing together, looking like lovers. With anger simmering in her voice, Linda said, "Are you doing this to get back at me? Throwing some 24-year-old girl in my face to get even? Actually, 21. I spent 4 days with her in the Bahamas. You know that dream vacation you and I always wanted to go on? It was impressive. I knew I had a big smile on my face when I said it, but I couldn't help it. The weekend was truly impressive." Linda glared at me after I finished speaking. I saw that my words made her very angry. I knew that the smirk on my face that I was left with increased her anger. I reminded myself of the children and took a deep breath, forcing my face to relax so that my grin disappeared. With a hot look in her eyes that I knew would be followed by some soul-searing condemnation, Linda opened her mouth and pointed her finger at me. But when she saw my grin appear again, she realized that I knew every word she was going to say. Linda froze. Then she exhaled slowly, closed her mouth, and placed her hand on the table. We sat quietly, staring at each other. I knew Linda wanted to yell at me, set my ass on fire, put me in my place for what I had done. But she realized that she had no moral ground left to stand on. The leverage she was used to in our relationship was based on love and trust. The same love and trust that she casually erased for one night of sex. It finally dawned on Linda that what she had done had cost her more than she had imagined. I'm sure that when Linda decided to sleep with Mark, she thought she would just spend some of the chips she had accumulated over the years of our marriage. She finally had a suspicion that she had foolishly put everything she had on the line. Linda sat quietly for a moment, staring at her hands clasped together on the table. "It doesn't matter. I love you. Yes, you continue to be sure that your love means something special. Why do you think your love is important to me after what you did? It's obvious that my love for you means nothing to you, so why should I value your love? But I don't want to lose you. Well, I don't understand why you thought you could completely destroy my trust in you and expect to keep me. You took me for granted, and now you don't deserve me." Linda looked confused. "I'm going to my place. I still have a lot of work to do around the house. I'll be back to have dinner with you and the kids. Please don't bother me until then." I got up and returned to my apartment. Linda cried when I left. Leaving Linda was terribly painful. I wanted to hug her like before, but deep down I knew there was no going back to what we were. The Linda I thought of as my wife was not, and never will be again. Everything I will ever have with her will be a painful reminder of everything we could have had, everything she carelessly destroyed without a second thought or an ounce of guilt. Before dinner, the kids and I went to my side of the house to look around. I showed them the new kitchen area and how I was going to cut out the back wall and make it all glass to overlook the new pool. They looked worried as they looked at the fence dividing the backyard in half. They realized that this side would be Daddy's. I then showed them where their new rooms would be on my side of the house. "Why do I need 2 bedrooms in the house, Dad?" asked Tommy. "Because this side will be my home and that side will be your mother's home." "Emma, are you and your mom getting a divorce, Dad?" Mom doesn't say anything, no matter how many times we ask. "No, they just separated. I don't want to be a dad for the weekend, so I thought I'd just split the house and you two can live on whichever side you want that day." Before we could continue, Linda poked her head through the front door to announce that dinner was ready. We ate in silence. Linda was tense. It was clear that the children learned more about what was going on. Tommy blurted it out too loudly. "I'll move in with Dad as soon as he finishes decorating my room." Linda had a shocked look on her face. "Dad said that you are breaking up?" "We are not. It's just a misunderstanding and we're not done discussing it yet." Emma slammed her hand on the table and shouted, "Who changed? I want to know." Emma and Tommy looked back and forth between Linda and me. I stared at Linda. Linda stared at her plate. When Linda began to cry, the children got their answer. I told the children that their mother was tired and needed some rest. I helped Linda up and walked her to the bedroom, undressed her, and put her to bed. I quickly kissed her forehead, as if she were a little child who had woken up from a nightmare. I turned off the light and closed the door. I focused on feeling for Linda as I would have for one of my children. Adult child, who committed a terrible crime and was sentenced to prison for the rest of his life. I would still love my child, but he would no longer be a part of my daily life or thoughts. First, I went to Tommy's room. He lay on his bed and corresponded with his friends. I asked him if he wanted to talk about it. He said, "No, not really." I went to Emma's room. Emma was angry and crying. "Why did she do this, Dad?" "You have to ask her. You can't just forgive her?" "Then I would never be able to forgive myself." Emma sighed. "I know, but I want us to stay together as a family." "We are together. I just won't sleep in the same room as your mother anymore." I hugged Emma. We said we loved each other, and I returned to my part of the house. This has become our new normal. I always left for work before the kids got up, so our morning routine didn't change. Linda and I still split our time between taking the kids to their friends, to group activities, and to sports. We still had our usual family dinner together whenever we could, in Linda's half of the house. Linda tried to talk to me about us about once a week, but I turned her off saying I didn't want to discuss it. Another obvious change was school functions. I have never stood or sat next to Linda during our children's school activities. If Linda sidled up to me, I immediately apologized and went to the toilet. When I returned, I sat or stood somewhere else. I've never been alone for long, as at least one of the single or divorced women we knew quickly found themselves next to me. And yes, they always asked. And my answer was, we separated. Over the next month, I bought new clothes, new appliances, new kitchen cabinets, and new furniture for my side. My side has been transformed into a swanky new bachelor pad with a giant TV and new entertainment system. When I bought a new top-of-the-line convertible, Linda tried to ask me about our finances. "Jim, can we afford all this? This car must have cost a fortune." "Well, Linda, my car was 8 years older than yours, and I needed a new one. You always bought a new car twice as often as I did, so I just invested a few of those missed years into my new car. As for everything else that's new, you really didn't expect me to live in a shack, did you? What about the furniture? I thought I was being considerate by not forcing you to give up any of the favorite furniture you bought to decorate your home. I would be happy to share our furniture." "It's okay. I've never been attracted by your taste in furniture." "Have you never said anything before?" "I never said anything before because I wanted you to be happy. and furniture didn't matter much to me. I let her think about that statement for a few moments. Don't worry, we have enough money. In fact, the house is paid for, and as soon as the children move out, my side will be too big for my needs. I'll rent out my part of the house for extra income, so money won't be a problem. Linda gave me her best smile, her "someone is going to get lucky today" smile, and reached out to squeeze my shoulder. I'm not complaining. I like your new car. You've been working out and looking sexy in your new clothes. Thank you. I can't take all the credit. Tommy and Emma wanted me to buy a convertible so they could drive it, and Samantha helped me pick out new clothes and furniture. We have very similar tastes. Linda's smile disappeared at the mention of Samantha, and her hand fell from my shoulder. Oh, I was just wondering. Linda then turned and walked away. I wasn't trying to throw Samantha in Linda's face, but Samantha was becoming a big part of my life. I also realized that I now think about Samantha quite often and very little about Linda's feelings. Samantha began to become a regular on my side of the house. At this point, Tommy and Emma began to spend most of their time on my side. Tommy has already moved into my side as his master bedroom. Emma, who had mostly stayed on Linda's side, began hanging out with Samantha more and more. Samantha seemed to become Emma's cool older sister. Soon, Samantha began spending all weekends and most weeknights with me. The only disagreement Linda voiced was when I insisted that Samantha come with me to our family dinner for the second time. Linda was polite, but everyone could tell she didn't want this to become a regular thing. The next day, Linda ran into me as I was leaving for work. "Jim, I appreciate you talking, but I wish you wouldn't bring your girlfriend during our dinner. This is our time to be family with kids. This is wonderful. In the future, I won't come to dinner when Samantha isn't there. But I will also have an open invitation for the kids to have dinner with me and Samantha if they want. It's not fair, Jim. This is the only time we can be together as a family." So, are we being fair again, Linda? Okay. To be honest, Samantha is becoming a big part of my life, and I want her to be more involved. Samantha and the children get along great. I don't think excluding Samantha from our family dinners is fair to her, fair to me, or fair to the kids. If you want to exclude her, you're going to exclude me too. But Jim, Linda, your honesty has always been that you bought yours. To hell with my feelings. I bet you thought you were being honest when you slipped out the back door to have sex with Marc Lavaliere. Even though we were no longer living together, it was surprising to see how easily Linda thought she could still manipulate me. Linda thought she had leverage over me beyond the well-being of the children. Linda, you threw honor out the window that night. So if you don't like it, fair would be to start cooking all the dinners on my end, and I'll let you come over when we have them. Samantha is a great cook and loves to do it. With tears in her eyes, Linda said, "I'm sorry I brought this up. Samantha is more than welcome to come over for dinner anytime she wishes." After the pool and hot tub were completed, Tommy especially enjoyed having Kim, Christy, and Susan come hang out by the new pool. They flirted shamelessly with Tommy. I know they were having a friendly competition to see who could make him blush the brightest. They first started competing by wearing tighter and tighter swimsuits. In the end, Christy couldn't really compete because her large breasts wouldn't allow anything too small or they would fall out. But Christy won after she kissed Tommy in the pool, pressing her big breasts against him. Tommy couldn't get out of the pool for a good 10 minutes, even though the water was cold. Tommy was definitely the real winner in their competition. As a result, Tommy gained more confidence from the girls and started a girlfriend at school. Once they met Tommy's girlfriend, the girls stopped flirting with Tommy and treated his girlfriend like the luckiest girl in the world. Samantha has some wonderful friends. And no, I never allowed Linda to come to my side of the house. I didn't want Linda to complicate my relationship with Samantha. But, unfortunately, a few years later, Samantha graduated from high school and we broke up. I saw it in Samantha's face when we went to Susan's wedding together. I knew that I was essentially becoming her sugar daddy because of our age difference. It didn't matter to me, but I could tell it mattered to Samantha. Don't get me wrong, we got along wonderfully. We spent the whole weekend together and I got to know most other families. We often went on vacation together, sometimes with children. When she mentioned that she was thinking about moving, I proposed to her. She told me that for her, I was honored that I invited her, but that she wanted to try a family tradition. I told her that I would like to start a new family. She never said it, but I saw the conflict in her eyes. I was the perfect man for her, just not the right age. Unfortunately, I felt like the other woman was taking me for granted for being a great guy. As subtle as I could, I tried to make Samantha realize that her long list of standards was becoming a wall that no man could climb. Trust is the foundation of healthy relationships. But, as with Linda, I became a victim of my own success. I could tell Samantha thought guys like me were a dime a dozen. I pointed out to Samantha that Linda was thinking the same thing and looked where she is now. When Samantha replied, "I would never be so stupid," our fate was sealed. In the end, I told Samantha that I understood, and if she changed her mind, I would always be there for her. Maybe we'll meet again later in life when she feels like the age difference isn't that important. I don't regret a single moment spent with Samantha, and at least she had the decency to talk to me honestly instead of sneaking out the back door of the club. As for Linda's friends, my former friends, I ran into them from time to time and they tried to convince me that I should return to Linda. After they released their tripe, I always ended with, "Sounds very convincing. Now tell me how you feel when your spouse cheats on you, because from what I saw that night, not only do they find cheating acceptable, but they encourage others. In fact, I don't think it was a coincidence that we ended up at a club that Mark Lavalier was known to frequent. I just happened to have the hottest wife. Karma is what it is. And a few months later, I heard that the girls had decided to move their girls' night out to a new dance club that Mark Lavalier frequented, without telling their husbands. One of Dave's friends at work, I mentioned to Dave that I saw Dee dancing with Mark at the club. He even mentioned that Mark disappeared about an hour later, around the same time the table full of ladies left the club. Dave's friend did not see Dee leave with the group. All the wives denied that they were there at all, and there must have been a mistake. A few days later, Dave's friend sent a photo of him and his girlfriend at a club. In the background, Mark Lavalier could be clearly seen talking to wives at the table. The wives finally confessed, but they all said that no one went with Mark. Of course, their stories didn't match, and eventually the true story came out. But not wanting to give away their friend, the wives refused to say who was the one who left with Mark. Unfortunately for them all, when they finally named Dee, it was too late for any of them. Too many lies and trust has been damaged. From what I was told, when all the husbands met to compare wives' stories, Dave's closing comment summed it up. They covered each other for a long time. They all lied to us too easily. This isn't their first girls' night out. How do we know it wasn't just Dee's turn to have fun with Mark Lavalier, or anyone else for that matter? Every husband saw the expression on his wives' faces when Mark Lavalier approached our table that evening. Everyone heard how their wives condoned Linda's behavior and how lucky she was to have this chance. After the first bachelorette party, which Linda attended, all the guys knew that wife afterwards. They were excited because Linda talked about her sex with Mark. At first, the husbands were happy to get a little extra stimulation in the bedroom, but a couple of months later, one of the husbands joked to the other how much he hated sleeping on silk sheets. After comparing, both husbands realized that the silk sheets were new and both sets were white. In conversation with other husbands, 4 beds with new white ones were discovered with silk sheets. After Dee's night with Mark, the husbands became concerned that their wives were reliving their own nights with him. All 4 couples divorced within a year. I found out about all this because Dave was the first one to get divorced, and he apologized to me after he told me what led to his divorce. Each husband later personally apologized to me for their role that night with Linda. Everyone basically said, "If I had stood up for you then, perhaps I would have sent a clearer message to my own wife, and we would still be married." As for Mark Lavalier, his picking up of married women ended up pissing off the wrong person. Nobody knows who did it, but as Mark Lavalier walked out of the back of the club with his latest conquest, someone in a ski mask tasered Mark. Before Mark could come to his senses, the guy hit him in the private parts. While Mark was screaming, holding his crotch, the guy literally crushed both of Mark's kneecaps. Even though they had the video, no one was ever brought to justice. There were too many husbands who had reasons and opportunities. Mark lost the ability to walk. As for Linda, the last time we talked about us was the day Emma moved out. We were already divorced, and I had already rented out my part of the house and moved into a condo by the sea. Standing in the driveway, Linda asked if she could talk to me after Emma pulled out to go to college. "Jim, I still love you. I made a terrible mistake, and I've regretted it every day since. Since then, I have not dated or even looked at another man. I know you haven't been in a serious relationship with anyone since Samantha, and I'd like you to move in with me again. Just to see how it goes?" Linda then took the necklace off her neck and handed it to me. At the end of it hung my wedding ring, the ring I gave to Dee the night Linda left me. Linda looked at me with hope in her eyes. "You still don't understand what went wrong, Linda. That night, you thought you could test my love for you, when in reality, it was a test of your love for me. But I really love you. No, you like what we once had. You loved that you had the perfect marriage, the perfect husband, the perfect children. You liked that I didn't treat you like property, like a trophy wife, that we shared important decisions. You loved that our lovemaking, although less frequent, was just as intense as when we first met. You liked that I always cared about how you felt, ahead of everyone else. You liked that I gave you financial security to do what you wanted. But more than anything else, you liked that I trusted you without a doubt. Now you love me more than before because you know that you will never find anyone else who would make you as happy. No one will be as in love with you as I once was." Linda didn't move. She still held the necklace at arm's length, but her hand turned white as she clutched it with a desperate grip. "You didn't appreciate what you had, and now it's gone. I can't be near you anymore. I will never again put you in a position where you have the opportunity to do what you did to me. I always thought it was us against the world, but you killed us when you ran away to be with Mark Lavalier." Linda began to cry. "How many times do I have to say that I regret going with him?" "It was never about Mark, Linda. You thought you were lucky when Mark Lavalier decided to take you home with him, but I was lucky too. When I was at my lowest, and your friends tried to convince me that I was a fool for being upset, I realized that you showed me that we truly are a wonderful couple. But not because of you, but because of me. You left because my love was so strong, not yours. My love would never even think of doing what you did. My love was the music to which we also danced, which made us so special." As I was sitting at this damn table, angry, thinking about these things, I saw Samantha across the room looking sad. When she saw me looking at her, she smiled. Her wonderful smile reminded me that I was still a man, and I had a chance to be happy with someone, that I could pour my love and devotion into a new we, a different us. Then you opened my eyes and set me free. With that, I climbed into my convertible and drove away with a big smile on my face. I couldn't wait to get home as soon as possible. Samantha quit her job out of town and moved in with me last week. Since then, she has done an excellent job of convincing me that she always needs me in her life. Trust is a wonderful thing. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. Our friends in blue showed up at my garage in the form of 2 police officers in a patrol car. I secretly watched them from my place under the lift. It was unusual to see such happy police officers. Their faces became more serious as they approached me. They confirmed my identity and said they had bad news for me. Something happened to my wife in our house and she was in the hospital, but they couldn't go into detail. I tried to leave right away, but they stopped me, wanting some answers. "Can you explain where you have been for the last 3 hours, sir?" "Yes, officer, I've been here all day. Just ask my 2 mechanics. Sorry, I actually snuck out for 10 minutes around 11 a.m. to get us coffee." One of the policemen came over to chat with Mike and Pete, Another wrote down which coffee shop I was at. "Can you show me your car, sir?" he asked. Of course, my truck is outside. I took him outside to my pride and joy. The thorough bastard combed the interior, then opened the hood and felt the engine, cold as a stone. "That's it, sir. You can go to the hospital." I had a look of concern on my face as the hospital staff member explained the extent of Kate's injuries, the fact that she had received a blood transfusion, and then informed me that she was now undergoing surgery. I thought it was very unprofessional of the doctor to half-smile the entire time he was talking to me. On leaving the hospital, I was intercepted by the same two policemen who were in the garage earlier. They wanted some more answers. We retired to the hospital cafeteria for some much-needed coffee. They wanted to know how my relationship with my wife was. I explained that we met and got married relatively late, 8 years ago. Kate worked successfully as an attorney for a large local firm. She basically wanted to have children but resisted my pressure until she was almost 40 years old because she wanted to establish herself in her job. They asked me why she was home on a weekday. I explained that Kate had quit her job a month ago to rest before her pregnancy, a sort of vacation before at least 10 years of domestic service. I then added in conclusion that I love my wife and we are doing well and are looking forward to having a baby. They asked me if I knew a certain John Barton. When I answered no and asked why they were asking, they avoided answering and walked away. I knew I could rely on my guys to lock the garage, so I went straight home. 2 forensic scientists and 1 detective were searching the house. The detective introduced himself and explained what he knew. He then asked me the same questions as the previous officers, plus 1 new one. "Can you explain why we found a few drops of blood in the downstairs toilet, sir?" "Sorry, I have no idea, detective." "Now, can I ask you something? It is clear that you are not treating this as an accident, and also that I am being treated as a suspect. Can you assure me that you are not concentrating on me as the only subject, but are also looking for the real culprit?" "You can rest assured, sir, that we have several lines of inquiry." My colleague is now talking to Mrs. Barton. "Who is this John Barton I keep hearing about?" "Sorry, sir. I think it is inappropriate for me to comment." He and the CSIs then walked away, leaving me confused. I went upstairs to the master bedroom and looked at the scene that was playing out. I would be really shocked if I was watching it for the first time. Earlier in the day, around 10 a.m. at work, I started thinking about sex. There is nothing unusual about this. They say guys think about sex an average of 67 times per waking hour. Let me tell you that men who have been virtually cut off from their wives for a month can at least double that. Since Kate left work, our 2-3 times a week has dropped to almost 0. Kate was either in a bad mood, bored and depressed, or too tired. Personally, I thought it was because her normal life was almost over and she was just scared. Being a caring husband, I didn't want to put pressure on her. She will come out of her fear at her own pace. I knew that my life would change after having children, but I understood that her life would be turned upside down. I kept daydreaming about what our sex life was like in the early years of our marriage. Anywhere, anytime, in any case. We made an effort to keep it fresh and new for as long as our imaginations continued to exist, and then slowly fell into the automatic mode that 2 long-term partners often fall into. I snapped out of my stupor. I knew what to do. Bring back spontaneity. Go home right now and have sex with Kate until you're unconscious. Okay. The decision has been made. It's time to get out and go home. I told Mick and Pete. I was going away for a while. Pete asked if I could take the car he had just finished servicing for a test drive. When I got home, I was disappointed to see an unfamiliar car in the driveway. Damn it, my friend's visit ruined my plans. I decided to go in anyway. Maybe my friend could be persuaded to leave, and my plans could be saved. Without any suspicion or attempt to hide, I opened the front door. My hair immediately stood on end, and I knew my marriage was over. The obvious sounds of ecstatic sexual activity literally thundered down the stairs. It was almost a reflex action to pull out the phone and start recording video. Whenever a client brought the car to the garage, I always took a quick video recording so that we wouldn't be accused of scratching it. With my heart pounding, I ran up the steps and peered through the bedroom door, video camera at the ready. Yes, it was Kate. And yes, it was some guy I didn't recognize happily having her on our bed. Fighting the urge to pounce and kill, I turned away. I can honestly say that this was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. My legs could no longer support me, and I collapsed on the floor right outside the door. Completely devastated, I was only dimly aware that they were reaching their peaks just around the corner. I don't know how long I stayed there, but gradually it dawned on me that all the sounds of their adultery had stopped and only conversations could be heard. It was just as bad and still tore me to the core. I knew I had to get out of earshot to give myself time to think. I instinctively knew that any reaction I made based on emotion would, at the very least, land him in the hospital and me in prison. I needed time to think. I quietly got up from the floor, tiptoed downstairs, and collapsed on the sofa. Away from the sights, smells, and most of the sounds of betrayal, I was free from emotional distractions. I did what I knew best and came up with a plan. Get him out of the room and out of sight, beat the crap out of him where there won't be too many bruises. The stomach should be in perfect order. Then throw him out the back door naked. Come back for her and throw her naked out the door. This should give them the right impression and give me complete freedom. Without bruises and witnesses, I hope I can avoid trial. Luckily, I had the perfect shock weapon in my workshop. 2 years ago, I served in the Army Reserve, National Guard, where my skills earned me the task of clearing the trucks we took back to base. That's where I found a small device that would now come in handy. Police call them stun grenades. Slightly larger than a regular grenade, they are basically a small canister with a lever pin ignition mechanism. They were specifically made for hostage rescue and were designed to cause little physical damage so that they could be thrown into a room full of innocent people without any significant harm. However, the explosion is accompanied by a flash with a power of 8 million candles and a shock sound of 170 decibels. The flash alone can stun a person to the extreme for at least 5 seconds. My mind, driven by my newly acquired hatred, quickly formed the rest of the plan. I didn't want to ruin my house, so I couldn't just throw a grenade on the floor. I took out the device and quickly glued a short piece of rope to it, then put a loop on the end of the rope. Having thus prepared, I tiptoed upstairs. As I got closer, I realized that secrecy was no longer necessary. I clearly heard men's moans coming from behind the bedroom door. Pausing only to pick up my phone from the floor outside the door where I had dropped it, I glanced around the door frame. It was heard that the second round of sex was in full swing. My wife satisfied her lover by caressing his manhood below the waist. Having mentally rehearsed the sequence of events I had decided to do, I took a deep breath and took action. One step into the room, loop the end of the rope around the hook on the bottom of the light fixture, leaving the device hanging halfway to the floor. Pull out the pin, put it in your pocket, and walk out the door again, pressing your fingers tightly to your ears and closing your eyes tightly. Even with my precautions, the effect was amazing. I clearly felt the shock wave and the bright reflected light through my eyelids. Following the plan, I jump into the room again, ready for action. This time it was my turn to be surprised. I don't know exactly what I expected to see, but it was nothing like the scene that appeared before me. Mr. Anonymous was lying on his back on the bed, and his manhood below the waist was clearly damaged. Either nature was extremely unkind to him, or something was missing. Kate lay on her back on the floor, her eyes blank, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Confused, I went back into the hall to think. My thoughts were soon interrupted by 2 unholy screams from the bedroom, followed by various bangs and slamming doors. I began to realize that I was in deep shit. My plan had failed. Once again, I peered around the doorframe at the scene of carnage. The guy rolled out of bed and curled up on the floor, holding his groin, screeching like a banshee. Kate was nowhere to be seen, but apparently she was in the bathroom. We need to remove the evidence. I returned to the room, looked around, and quickly found the detonator mechanism for the device. adding it to the rope. I couldn't find anything else, so I concluded that everything else had been destroyed. I headed to the bathroom, very carefully. Kate was on her knees, vomiting into the toilet. I had no desire to go and help her, I just didn't care anymore. On my way to the door, I noticed something on the floor. I picked up a piece of flesh. It was warm and soft, and resembled the tip of a tongue. On the way to the front door, I went into the toilet on the first floor and flushed it. They wouldn't sew it back on. Trying not to squeal the tires, I rushed down the street, once again glad that we lived so far from the neighboring houses. Halfway to the garage, I dumped my pockets into a roadside trash can. 10 minutes later, I was back in the small garage that I called work. I called Pete and Mike, two dirty, oil-stained guys who I call my employees and friends. They hurried to me, seeing that I was alarmed. "Guys, I need you to be my alibi for the last 45 minutes. What do you say?" "Of course, boss," was heard almost simultaneously. "Well, before you agree so quickly, I must tell you that what I did is very serious, and once I explain to you what it is, you may not be so quick to answer. I don't know what I'll be charged with, but it could mean jail time." Before explaining this to them, I went into my office and threw on my dirty old overalls. I then walked over to the trash can and grabbed an oily rag, rubbing it into my face and hands. I didn't know when the police would show up here, but I expected them. The guys looked at me a little stunned. I briefly told them about recent events. Mike was the first to break. He tried to hold on for a good 15 seconds and then burst out laughing. This broke the ice for Pete, who soon joined Mike and me in uncontrollable hooting. It was a full 5 minutes before we all regained control, and with handshakes and promises of support, they returned to their oily engine bays. Over the next hour, spontaneous chuckles were heard from various dingy rooms. My wife Kate was about to reap the reward she deserved for keeping her distance from my lowly friends in the past. I was cleaning up the master bedroom. That evening, I just washed the bathroom floor. I decided to just throw out the bedding and made a mental note to buy a new rug for the bedroom. Torn curtains will also have to be removed. I tried to stay busy, avoiding thoughts. This process was not helped by constant phone calls and knocking on the door. Yes, the media was in feeding frenzy mode. The combination of adultery and a guy having his manhood bitten off was a story sent from heaven to him. I opened the door only once and soon turned off the phone. Finally, with nothing to distract me, I began to do some soul-searching. Do I regret what I did? Strange, but no. I hated cheaters with a passion. I've seen too many guys turn into women when they catch their partners. The funny thing is that even before lunch, I was ready to bet my life on the fact that my wife shared this passion. I was stunned that I was so wrong. Not to mention I was completely taken aback by Kate's motivation. She seemed to be as devoted to me as I was to her, and our sex life was absolutely wonderful. Well, until recently, that was the case. After several hours of inner turmoil, I could only find one single clue. I remembered how the hairs on the back of my neck stood up 2 months ago when Kate announced that she was retiring to enjoy her last days of freedom. I expected her to work until at least the 7th month of pregnancy. Something about her saying she wanted one last hooray before having kids struck me as odd. My thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of my personal cell phone. Few people knew this number. Caller ID showed it was Kate's parents' number. They lived in the same state but about 3 hours away. I always got on fantastically with them, so I answered. After much less of the usual pleasantries, her mother got down to business. "Dave, what's going on? Do you know why a bunch of journalists are besieging our house?" "Well, they'll have to find out someday. I just couldn't bring myself to go into detail." Mum, did you watch the local news this evening? Maybe the main news." "What? About some cheater who bit off her lover's dignity. I always liked her mom's colorful language and her views on life, but damn, it didn't make our conversation easy." "Yes, Mom. Look, there's no easy way to say this, so I'll get straight to it. The woman's name is Kate. Luckily, my confusion was interrupted by a scream, followed by a beep. When I pressed the end call button on my phone, I noticed a warning on the screen. This reminded me that I wrote down the end of my marriage just 8 hours ago. I had vague memories of leaving my phone recording outside my bedroom door. I knew that if I never knew or believed the reason why Kate did what she did, I would never be able to trust any woman again. There was a good chance that I would die a lonely misogynist, doomed to a life of uselessness. With desperate hope, I started playing the video. I already knew what it was showing. The pain was too fresh to relive the scene. I opened my eyes just as I put the phone on the floor. Without a visual representation, just a view of the hall, ceiling. I had to imagine Mr. and Mrs. Adultery lying side by side on the bed. I couldn't hear the sound clearly, so I downloaded the file to my computer and ran it through an amplifier. This is an important part of their conversation. Wow, Kate, it was fantastic. Last week has been great, actually. Does this really have to end today? My offer still stands. Just give me your word, and I will divorce Sarah and marry you. Well, yes, it looks like it will work. A great start to a marriage with a guy who left his wife and kids. No, and I love Dave too much to hurt him like that. In addition, he is a great husband and will be a good father. After today, I will be Mrs. Goody-Goody, a housewife, at least until the youngest of our children starts school. You can't love him that much. It's not him lying here next to you. No, you're mistaken. I love him very much. The moment I met him, I knew he was my only soulmate. I will never meet another. We are very much in tune sexually. I am happy that I have such a good man who spoils me and will nurse me when I get a big belly from his 2 or 3 babies. No, I want nothing more than to die in his arms, surrounded by our grandchildren. Well, that was a great speech, but it begs the obvious question. Why are you with me now? At least Kate had the humanity to think about it. There was silence for a good half a minute. I guess I just missed the past. I didn't get married until I was 31 and was a bit of a wild girl. I missed just walking into a bar and getting attention from all kinds of guys. The thrill of leading a guy forward and then impulsively deciding whether he gets what he wants or not. Lately, Dave has been deer hunting with his buddies every other weekend. 3 weekends ago, I decided to take a trip down memory lane and check out a bar. This resulted in one night that was okay but unsatisfying. Then last Saturday, I happened to walk into the bar you were at, and here we are. God, you're so cold, Kate. Just consider this the last hooray. Anyway, what are you complaining about? Come here. I said it had to end today. I didn't say it had to end right now. I turned off the sound. At least now I knew that I was a good lover and husband. The problem wasn't me. The following days passed in complete disappointment. 2 days later, the reporters demobilized and left my quiet street. The hospital administrator called me and said that Kate would like some pajamas. I missed this one. She will have to put up with these humiliating hospital gowns. 2 days later, her father called me. He apologized for his daughter's behavior and expressed hope that I would keep in touch with him. To try to sweeten the deal, he reminded me that he has another daughter and she was recently divorced. Sorry, Dad, it's just too weird. 4 days after this event, he was shown on the news again. Mr. Not-So-Big-Dick has been released from the hospital. Journalists dug up something and exposed him as a serial cheater. So it was with some pleasure that they announced that, although the surgeons had succeeded in sewing his manhood back together, it was very unlikely that it would achieve any of its intended functions. At the end of that week, I received an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Barton, or Sarah, as she insisted I call her, was a pretty lady with sad eyes. She told me that she had heard rumors that I might have some evidence that could help her in her divorce case. I explained that maybe it was true, but I couldn't admit it without exposing myself. She understood everything and was very apologetic for asking. I told her that I thought there was such an abundance of circumstantial evidence that she wouldn't need what I had. If this turns out to be wrong, I will persuade her to return and perhaps change her mind. There was such sadness in her that I felt sorry for her. Pulling out the video file, I played her only in the aftermath of the big explosion. The shock of her husband's screams made her cower at first, but she soon pulled herself together. Suffice it to say that she was not very sad when she left. Being the helpful guy that I am, I invited her to come pick me up when the sadness returned. Oh yeah, that wasn't the last time I saw Sarah Barton. The last visitor I received was probably the strangest. On Saturday, I answered the door to the detective I had spoken to at the house on the day of the big event. The suit disappeared, leaving only jeans and a shirt. "Hey, son, no, I won't come in. I just wanted to say that if there was insufficient evidence, I recommended that the case be closed." Hearing my gratitude, he turned to leave, but stopped and looked back. "Listen, at the end of the year, I will retire. If I come back after this, will you tell me how you did it?" I just smiled and wished him a good day. Kate's letter arrived the following Tuesday. "My dear Dave, I can't express how ashamed and sorry I am that I did this to you. I understand perfectly why you couldn't bring yourself to visit me, and I forgive you unconditionally. I never thought about the full extent of the possible consequences of my actions. I, of course, did not imagine that my parents would actually disown me. I know that I have lost your love, trust, and respect forever, which hurts me more than I can describe. I will understand if you never want to talk to me again, but it may help your recovery if you allow me to explain why I did what I did. Just be sure that it's all my fault. Doctors say that I won't be able to speak normally for a long time, if at all. They think I swallowed the tip of my tongue when I bit it off. They tell me about some experimental stretching technique that can restore some function. I hope this works, and I can at least get back to my career as a distraction from the dull, loveless, childless future I'm currently facing. Ask anything you want in a divorce, and I will sign it. If you could find it in your heart to keep me on your health insurance for the near future, I would be forever grateful. Farewell, my love. I wish you nothing but happiness in the future. I hope I haven't completely ruined your life. Your Kate, aka your cheating wife." I must say that the letter touched me, so much so that I immediately reversed my previous decision and sent her pajamas to the hospital. Now, where are Mick and Pete's phone numbers? Do I owe them a beer? A keg each. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.